The Midnight Signal. Setting. It's the summer of 1984 in a small, sleepy town called Willow Creek. The kind of place where everyone knows everyone, and where life moves at a slower pace. The story centers around three best friends, Mike, Jenny, and Tom, who are all 14 years old. The trio spends their days riding bikes, playing Pac-Man at the local arcade, and staying up late to watch VHS tapes of their favorite movies. Story. It was a Friday night in late July, and the town was enveloped in a warm, humid haze. The summer had been long and uneventful, with nothing to break the monotony of endless days. That was, until the strange radio signal appeared. Mike, Jenny, and Tom were hanging out in Mike's basement, where they had set up an old ham radio that Mike's dad had left behind when he moved out. The radio, a relic from the 60s, had always fascinated the trio, even though it had never picked up anything but static. That night, however, something changed. As the clock struck midnight, the radio came to life with a burst of static, followed by a strange, rhythmic beeping. The three friends exchanged curious glances. Mike reached over and fiddled with the dials, trying to tune in the signal. The beeping grew louder, more insistent, and then it was replaced by a voice. Help! Willow Creek. Midnight, the tunnel. The voice crackled, distorted but unmistakably human. Tom's heart raced as he looked at his friends. Did you hear that? What was that? Jenny, always the bravest, leaned in closer. It sounded like someone asking for help. From Willow Creek. That's us. Mike nodded, his eyes wide. And something about a tunnel. What tunnel? Willow Creek didn't have any tunnels that they knew of, at least none that were public knowledge. But the voice had sounded desperate, urgent. The three of them knew they couldn't ignore it. After a brief, intense discussion, they decided to investigate. Armed with flashlights, their bikes, and Tom's dad's old baseball bat, just in case, they set off into the night, following the voice's instructions. The town was eerily quiet as they pedaled through the deserted streets, the only sound being the whir of their bike wheels and the distant hum of crickets. They reached the outskirts of town, where the abandoned train yard lay, a relic of the town's once thriving past. No one went there anymore, it was considered unsafe, a place where only ghosts of the past lingered. But something drew them there tonight. Maybe it was their voice on the radio, or perhaps the thrill of a real adventure, something more exciting than playing video games or watching The Goonies for the 10th time. As they approached the train yard, they saw it, the entrance to a tunnel, hidden behind a tangle of overgrown bushes and rusted metal. It looked old, far older than anything else in the town. The air around it was thick with a sense of foreboding, but also an odd, magnetic pull. Are we really doing this? Mike asked, his voice trembling slightly. Jenny gave him a determined nod. We have to. Someone might be in trouble. Tom took a deep breath. All right, let's go. The tunnel was pitch black inside, the kind of darkness that swallowed everything. The friends switched on their flashlights and stepped in, the beams of light cutting through the inky blackness. The air was damp, cold, and smelled faintly of earth and rust. They walked deeper into the tunnel, their footsteps echoing ominously off the walls. As they moved further in, the sound of their breathing became the only thing they could hear, until they reached a small, hidden chamber. Inside the chamber, they found an old, dusty radio transmitter, just like the one in Mike's basement. It was ancient, covered in cobwebs, and looked like it hadn't been touched in decades. But the strangest thing was that it was still powered on, emitting a soft hum. Jenny stepped forward, shining her flashlight on the radio. How is this possible? This thing looks like it's been here for years. Mike, curious as always, reached out and gently turned one of the dials. The radio crackled to life again, and the same voice from earlier echoed through the chamber. Help, trapped. Willow Creek. Midnight, the tunnel. Suddenly, their voice changed, becoming clearer, more frantic. They are coming, you have to get out, before it's too late. The three friends froze. Before they could react, a cold breeze swept through the tunnel, extinguishing their flashlights. The chamber was plunged into darkness. Panic set in. Tom grabbed Jenny's hand, and Mike fumbled to switch his flashlight back on. When he finally did, the beam of light illuminated something on the far wall, faded writing in red paint. It read, "Do not open the gate." "What does that mean?" Jenny whispered, her voice barely audible. Before anyone could answer, a loud creaking noise echoed through the tunnel. The ground beneath them began to shake, and the walls of the tunnel seemed to close in. "We have to go, now!" Mike yelled. The three of them turned and ran, sprinting back through the tunnel as fast as they could. The air grew colder, and they could hear whispers, faint but menacing, coming from the darkness behind them. Just as they reached the entrance of the tunnel, something grabbed Tom's ankle, pulling him back. He screamed, but Mike and Jenny grabbed him, pulling with all their strength. With a final heave, they yanked him free and stumbled out of the tunnel, gasping for breath. They didn't stop running until they were far away from the train yard, back on the familiar streets of Willow Creek. When they finally slowed down, they looked back, but the tunnel was gone, as if it had never been there. Breathless and shaken, they made a silent pact never to speak of what had happened that night. But the memory of their voice, the tunnel, and the warning on the wall would stay with them forever. The next day, Mike returned to the basement, where the old ham radio sat, silent and still. He hesitated for a moment, then turned it on. Static filled the room, and after a few seconds, a voice came through. But this time, it wasn't asking for help. It was laughing.